Welcome to episode 188 of the Grip Strip podcast, the Expect Anything Different edition of the Grip Strip podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, gentleman, scholar, and congrats to the man. He has gotten a promotion, so now he gets to spend more money at Jacksonville Jaguars games. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. And yeah, that's thank you for that. I might have to be doing a lot more games. We'll see. Depending on how the Jags do. It's more fun, to see them when they're playing good. But we'll get into that later. Good racing here at Texas this past weekend, of course. And now we get into the thick of the playoffs here in the round of 12. So yeah, ready to get into it.
Yeah, pretty condensed week here on the GSP, NASCAR centric, and then with Texas, the Texas dump, and then Talladega, and then Formula One in Suzuka, and even the roundup only has 3 races, mostly motorcycles. So we'll also talk about the IndyCar schedule release. And the Tate Fogelman algorithm is going to come out of hibernation for the last time in 2023. It'll go in hiding until the Daytona 500. So we'll see what it spits out for us. If it comes up with something really crazy, there's some interesting paint schemes that have been announced. So we'll see what's going on with that. So, we'll start with the Cup Series at Texas. It was carnage-filled, the Texas race, the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400. Thankfully, they cut 100 miles out of this race because it ended up being 3:14. If they had run another 100 miles, it would have probably been another hour. In the end, William Byron showing what he usually does, which is right there late in races, backdooring victories. He's backdoored another one, gets his 6th win of the 2023 season, locks himself into the round of 8, at the expense of Darrell Wallace Jr., who qualified on pole and led the most laps. Strategy in the stages left him without many stage points, though. It's kind of a loss there, but we'll get into that. William Byron was the winner, as I said. Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, your top 5. Kevin Harvick from 22nd to 6th. Brad Keselowski, Daniel Suarez, Richard, and Chase Briscoe rounded out the top 10. William Clyde Elliott II was 11th. Chris Buescher started on the front row but finished 14th. Carson Osavar gets another top 20 finish. Martin Truex Jr. is 17th. In terms of some of these other drivers, Tyler Reddick, 25th, won the first stage. Had issues later on with pit stops and all. Ryan Blaney's car was dog crap the whole weekend and then got involved in a wreck. Eric Jones was up front for a good amount of the race and then got involved in an incident. Kyle Larson led the second most laps and was racing Bubba late and lost the air on his spoiler and put it in the fence. Speaking of somebody who lost it and put it in the fence, Kyle Busch yet again goes and destroys his 8 car and another DNF for him. We'll see what that means in regards to his playoff, if he can get out of this round, because this has basically been what Kyle Busch has been doing for months. Keebler Gibbs ran into the side of Denny Hamlin and got eliminated on the spot. So there's that. 22 lead changes amongst 13 drivers, 11 cautions for 55 laps. The biggest one was the lap 257 incident, which took out Blaney, Cindric, Zane Smith, AJ Allmendinger, Tyler Reddick, and Carson Osavar there. In the end, Bubba Wallace was pretty hard on himself, Josh, going and saying he choked it on that last restart. If you didn't see it, there was a bunch of restarts late in the race. He made the a really good restart against Larson, drove him, door to door, and was able to come out the other side with the lead. And then Chase Briscoe, who, after being absolute trash all through the weekend, used pit strategy. That's part of why they have Boswell up there. He took a gamble, did 2 tires, got him track position, and then the car was not horrible. Of course, it wasn't a winning car, but you give yourself track position, you never know, especially because it's Texas. In the end, Briscoe had pushed Bubba on at least one of those restarts, and on what ended up being the final restart, he was on the inside of Bubba there, and they raced into 1 and 2. Bubba had issues with holding on to his car, so he had to get out of it. Briscoe took the lead briefly, but then ended up getting tight coming off of 2, which allowed Byron to go 3 wide, pass both of them, and take the victory. I think the 2 pieces here, of course, is Byron gets another victory, locks himself into the round of 8, going into 2 theoretical wildcard races of Talladega and the Roval. He's comfortable working on trying to get more playoff points, while there's a lot of stress for some of these other drivers that are involved in the playoff. And then secondarily, what Darrell Wallace Jr. did, yet another 1.5 mile racetrack, shows his speed, shows his capabilities for, even though people want to go and act like there's segments of the population that don't want to act like he can't drive. He can drive. And he drove pretty darn well. The strategy in the stages probably wasn't the greatest, but he was up front when it mattered. And unfortunately, that last restart, personally, I thought Byron was laying back there, and that was one piece of why Bubba ended up having the issues that he had, because if they actually made him go and run, close together, then I don't know if Byron would have had the run, if he had the room, all that. But it is what it is. Byron is having a career year, and he's putting himself right on deck to be in the Final Four, Josh. And Darrell Wallace Jr., even with what he said was a choke, showed once again that he is somebody that has pace, has speed, and he can win. It's unfortunate he's been close so far this year. It's just been just a little bit here and there. So what did you take away from this Texas race on Sunday?
Well, yeah, I think, going right into that finish there with Bubba Wallace and William Byron on that restart, you talk about first Chase Briscoe. If you go back to the previous restart where he was able to give Bubba a really good launch off the restart, it seems like maybe he damaged the splitter or the front bumper or something, and changed the aerodynamics on that. And so now when he's going up on the front row and goes into the middle of turn 1 and 2 and is trying to hold his line, that's why he got tight and kind of pushed Bubba up the track there off of turn 2 and kind of slowed some of his momentum. And then I think that gives Byron the inside line going to turn 3. But I think Bubba, obviously you give him a lot of credit for being more competitive, but I think one area I think he needs to improve on is just closing the deal there. And I think, for me personally, I think instead of trying, if you look at the replay, you saw how he kind of drove a shallow line going into turn 3 to try to take air away from William Byron there. I think if he just arced his corner as normal, like taking the top and everything, I think he would have been okay. And I think they would have met up side by side, William Byron there, and towards the mid corner of turns 3 and 4 there at Texas. So, and maybe they would have dueled it out side by side for the lead again, like he was doing with Larson or something like that. So at least on that restart lap, could have done a better job there of holding his ground. And I think he alluded to that in his interview and everything post race. But that's kind of what I thought about that finish there and how that went down. But definitely for Bubba's definitely improved this season. Just hasn't had ability to win yet so far, but he's been performing a lot better, even better than what he was doing last year, which was a career year for him there at 23:11. So building on it, and I think you have to consider with him only being 2 points out, even though he didn't win. Obviously, you win, you get into the round of 8, and then there's a very real chance that he actually could make it to the final 4. But if you make it to Talladega only 2 points out of the round of 8, or the cutoff for the round of 8, then I think that's a pretty good position to be in. Obviously, 2 points out, you want to be on the inside, but you race with I guess knowing that you just need to be gain 2 points. On the other end, if you're only 2 points behind or ahead, you feel like you're on shaky ground. You have to drive conservatively. But I think if you on the outside looking in like that, you got nothing to lose. So small big picture, I guess you could say there. So only 2 points out. That's a pretty decent position to be in. And we got Talladega, which is good track for him and everything coming up. And the Roval, I know he's not that good on road courses, but he's definitely improved some in the last year or two on there. So as much as for fans of him, disappointing to run that close to winning and not get it. Still a lot to take away from that. So that's first takeaway from that. But then also throughout the race, a lot of cautions, throughout it. Of course, towards the end, had the wreck with Kyle Larson, wrecking out there. Kyle Busch wrecked and everything. So turns out that turn 1 and 2 is Calamity Corner again, which I think usually is at Texas and everything. So a lot of incidents here this weekend, and definitely had playoff guys that had issues, like mentioned Larson, Kyle Busch, both of them now on shaky ground going into Talladega. Ryan Blaney, also, somebody that I think we thought would have performed better so far in this playoffs, on shaky ground. So here, and Tyler Reddick also, he was in that caution with Ryan Blaney, kind of triggered that one, getting tight off of turn 4 there after the Larson caution, and that was kind of a poor showing there after their effort that they had, where they led 36 laps and won the first stage. So for Reddick and a lot of those other playoff guys, they lost ground and everything, and they're in Bubba Wallace seemingly still on the outside looking in, actually gained ground with his points position after this race compared to what he had going in. So for a lot of these guys, now they got to go to Talladega with a sense of urgency. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, kind of a typical Texas race, where we don't really see a whole lot of passing for your lead, but I guess the battles that we did see, definitely good battles that we see, and especially towards the end, like talking about with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson. But of course, a lot of crashing throughout. So it's definitely a kind of an eventful race for sure.
Eventful race for sure, and par for the course with this reconfigure, with the turn 1 and 2 being flatter, and essentially if you get out of the lower groove or the lane above it, you're in no man's land, putting it in the wall. 3 and 4 is still the same, but with 3 and 4 you have the exit, which tightens up. The transitions not as bad as they used to be, but definitely a track where you're going to have more spread out racing, and this next Gen 7 car has been really good at cookie cutter tracks, but in this case, it's kind of meh. But it feeds into what has become the recent trend, which is the Toyotas have been really solid on a weekly basis. So, and especially on 1.5 mile racetracks, Reddick ended up winning a stage. Bubba ends up leading the most laps. You had the likes of Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin up there. So, I mean, it shows that Toyotas aren't going away there. With Elliott, he was up there late in the race trying to get that elusive victory this year. So was Briscoe. Daniel Suarez ran top 10 basically the entire day when people or the vultures are starting to come around for him because of all the stuff going on with Trackhouse Racing. Brad Keselowski, solid, quiet top 10. Kevin Harvick gets eliminated out of the chase and then finishes top 10 the next week. There was some movers relative to what you would expect because it's really track position centric. But, it's Texas Motor Speedway. It's you can't really be shocked by anything anymore when it comes to that dump. But, so we'll move forward here. The drivers' point standings moving into Talladega this coming weekend. Kyle Larson is on the cutoff, +2 over Bubba, as Josh mentioned, +3 over Tyler Reddick, +11 over Ryan Blaney, and 17 points above on Kyle Busch. So that's the situation there. Brad Keselowski is +8, and Ross Chastain is +12. It's really right now, Byron, of course, is locked in. And then Hamlin's got pretty good points. It's condensed from there on, from Buescher on. So we'll see what happens at Talladega for sure. It can affect with the playoff points and going and racing for those, or stage points, how that'll affect the standings this coming weekend. The Xfinity Series race, similar to what took place on Sunday for Saturday. John Hunter Nemechek ends up getting his 7th win of 2023, locks himself into the round of 8. Parker Kligerman was up there with a chance to win the race, and whether it was he got tight or whatever, he ended up not being able to hold. He took the lead off over Allgaier, got him, but Nemechek came around him and got the victory. Kligerman wanted that victory pretty bad, of course, but in the end, he ends up runner-up. John Hunter Nemechek, the winner, led the second most laps in the race. Kligerman, Sammy Smith gets a top 5 finish, so rare for him considering what he's been doing recently. Chandler Smith 4th. Justin Allgaier started on pole, won both stages, led the most laps, ends up holding the bag and finishing 5th. Cole Custer led 28 laps and got good stage points, finished 6th. Austin Hill, Sheldon Creed, Buckshot Jones, and Brett Moffitt round out the top 10. Trying to go through some of the Daniel Hemrick ended up having, I think there was electrical problems for Daniel Hemrick, or I think it was electrical problems for Hemrick, and he was running in the top 10 pretty solid, but those issues and getting and going and wrecking left him 24th. Josh Berry got stage points, but he got involved in a wreck. It's not looking great for him in his chase to possibly win the title. Jeb Burton went scorched earth on his pit crew and basically threw him under the bus because the left rear wheel was left loose, and the axle cap came off, and the axle fell out of the damn car. He was running top 10 before all those issues started too, so it was a rough situation for them. Ends up 31st. Trevor Bayne was driving for Gibbs in the Interstate Batteries car, started 2nd, good stage points, but ends up wrecked. And then Sam Mayer put it in the fence on the first lap in turns 1 and 2, after he had said that he was going to take it easy and you're going to go and build up into the race. He literally puts it in the fence 20 seconds into the race. So there is that. It's in a lot of ways, it's similar to this whole Will Byron deal in that he's been a dominant figure in terms of wins. I mean, has he been dominant? I think the Watkins Glen race was dominant. But if you're going to ask, has he been dominant in many other races, I wouldn't say, I can't really say for sure. However, when it comes to John Hunter Nemechek, he has been dominant in a lot of cases. This past weekend wasn't an instance of that, but right place at the right time, got the track position, and was able to earn that victory lock into the round of 8. So he's comfortable. Talladega is a hit or miss track for him anyway. The road courses, he's been garbage on the road courses, so that really gives him a bit of, a respite there, so he doesn't have to worry about the Roval. But John Hunter Nemechek goes out there, Josh, and gets another victory, and Parker Kligerman and even Justin Allgaier are left to wonder what could have been after they put themselves, or they were in position to win the race for a good amount of it, at least in Allgaier's case.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously been a very dominant season for John Hunter Nemechek, but he's somebody that just been throughout the year, been good on speed throughout the entire season. So now he wins and locks himself into the Xfinity round of 8 here. So definitely a good start for him. Justin Allgaier missed opportunity there, but honestly, he's still got a good cushion to stay safe in. Only 11 points behind the points lead, and well above that cut line there. And Parker Kligerman, I think that's the real missed opportunity. Obviously, at the towards the bottom, right on that cut line, still 1 point out, but definitely a win for him. Changes everything and definitely shakes up the field in terms of points there. So definitely for Kligerman could have been something there. I think especially for car and a team that doesn't win as much. Allgaier, they've won fairly often throughout his time there. So not really a huge loss, but for somebody that doesn't win as often, Parker Kligerman doesn't really find himself at the front of the pack that often, so he definitely could have had an opportunity there. But some of these other guys, like Sam Mayer, of course, crashing early, Josh Berry having issues throughout the race, and finishing multiple laps down. Definitely not the start that he wanted, and obviously now Barry and Sam Mayer are both towards the bottom of the standings. So, I think for GR Motorsports, fans, your best shot is looking like it's probably going to be Allgaier for the title more than likely. So, yeah, that's a tough start there. And then, talk about other guys that could be on the bubble, like Daniel Hemrick, of course, had a wreck there on lap 195. So, definitely, stayed out of the race after 195 laps. So, definitely problems there for him. And, now being on the cut line, he's only 1 point above going into a road course where, he definitely needs that result, something that he's going to have to, have 2 weeks to prepare for before going into the Roval. So, good start for the playoffs here in the Xfinity Series. I think the names that we expect are performing, and I think as we go throughout the next couple of races here, we'll see how it goes. I think the road course is going to definitely be a wild card event, and then people that need to win, they'll have one more shot at Las Vegas for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's where they're not going to be racing at Talladega this weekend, so going to the Roval wild card, I mean, after racing here at Texas Motor Speedway and destroying plenty of equipment, you gotta build yourself up, and you have to put yourself in a position. The Roval will be the last race of the first round for the Xfinity Series. Then they'll get into Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville. They'll race the last 5 weeks of the season consecutively. So that'll their last off week is this weekend with them. So we will see what happens with that. They'll have time to prepare the road course cars. The teams that really need a miracle or a Hail Mary, the likes of Jeb Burton, it doesn't really matter. He ain't going to do it. Josh Berry's not a great road racer. Mayer has the ability because he's won 2 road races so far this year. Kligerman is considered a big-time road racer. He's only a point behind Hemrick, 9 points behind Sheldon Creed. So that's really where the situation is. After Allgaier and Nemechek are both locked in to the round of 8. So Custer, pretty certain he'll go and he'll be all right. Same for Austin Hill. It gets kind of a little sketchy for the Smiths, and then from then on. So we will get into that more next week for the XFinity Series and what's going on with them leading into their cutoff for the first round. So yeah, we'll move forward here into the Japanese Grand Prix, which saw who get another victory after a odd circumstance at Singapore where he didn't have a qualifying pace, committed multiple infractions that weren't addressed, then was racing from 11th, ended up getting a top 5 finish, but he wasn't the factor that he usually is, where he dominates and wins by 10, 20, 30 seconds. This weekend was basically what it has been all year. He got a good start, was able to hold off the McLarens, and actually utilized his teammate Sergio Perez's issues to make a bigger gap during the VSC, which in turn basically, the race was over at the start, of course, but really that VSC and then Lando Norris having to hold back because he didn't know if he should overtake or not, lost him tons of time, put him in the crosshairs of the Ferraris and the Mercedes. But that's racing there for the Japanese Grand Prix. Let me just get the results quickly here. Leading into So leading into Qatar for the Qatar Grand Prix, the results we'll get into. So Fishlips gets a victory by 19.387 seconds over Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri finishes 3rd, first podium of his career. Charles Leclerc 4th, Lewis Hamilton 5th, Carlos Sainz 6th, George Russell 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly round out the top 10. Liam Lawson ended up finishing ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, lap down after the announcement was made that Yuki Tsunoda will continue for another year and Daniel Ricciardo will be his teammate in the AlphaTauris or whatever they're going to be called in 2024. But Liam Lawson has been guaranteed a seat for 2025 from what is out there in the news. I think team play is something that we definitely have to look into because the McLarens had to do team play. Lando was basically muttering and wanting to get position on Piastri. In the end, Piastri was able to move over and they didn't lose so much time. The Mercedes basically bottled their situation largely because George Russell is so obsessed in beating Lewis Hamilton that he forgot the greater goal, which is they're trying to stay in second in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari's up there. He goes and cedes the position earlier to Lewis. He can go and maintain with the older tires and have more to fight with Carlos Sainz instead of what ended up being the case. And with the Alpines, the two French guys, there are definitely a little bit of friction after having to do a swap late in the race there. So, I mean, that's the main, I think one of the main stories from was all the team play that had to take place at Suzuka, because otherwise there really wasn't a whole hell of a lot. Sergio Perez ran into everything, hit everything but the lottery. They figured out there's a rule in the that you can actually, if you go and retire the car, you can come back out and start over again or start again. So because he had multiple penalties, he had a 5-second penalty for avoidable contact. They put the car back together, had him go back out and run one lap and bring him back in to serve his penalty, so we won't have that at Qatar. But same old, at least with the Top Step. They win the Constructors' Championship, so 2 years in a row for Red Bull. And but McLaren's definitely showed a lot of pace, and I think they're going to be a force to be. I mean, they've been a force to be reckoned with since Silverstone, but I think the rest of the season is going to be interesting, that dynamic between the teammates, because they're going to be there for a while, both Norris and Piastri. So how they race each other, trying to manage constructors' points and all, how things go. But I mean, interesting race for sure, Josh, behind what usually happens.
Yeah, definitely an interesting race there. Yeah, obviously Red Bull with Verstappen getting right this past weekend, getting back to their usual form that they've shown throughout the season, and completely dominating. Of course, you mentioned Sergio Perez running into everything and then dropping out of the race, but then coming back to serve the penalty rather than carrying it into the next race with a grid drop. That's something pretty interesting. Haven't really seen that in Formula One, something that's definitely rare, and wonder if they're going to do something about that, because we don't really ever see that type of strategy kind of come out. So interested to see what the stewards have to say about that later in the week or later in the year. So we'll see about that. But you had that obviously, and then the McLarens. I thought the McLarens were really impressive this weekend, obviously finishing on podium in second and third. And yeah, you're right that these two teammates, Norris and Piastri, are able to work together. Piastri was holding up Norris briefly, in the middle point of the race, but they were able to orchestrate the overtake there for Norris to get out in front, and had a little bit of racing there, which is interesting. But the faster guy was Norris, and he definitely needed to get around him, and they got him to get around his teammate there. So that's an example of good teammates. And then obviously whatever's wrong with Russell and Hamilton, obviously they're beginning to clash with each other for whatever reason. And Russell, of course, had an interesting strategy there, going on one stop, and he had gotten up to fourth in that beginning of the race, but then he dropped out to get his one stop and everything, and just don't know if that was the right strategy to do that. Everybody else was on two stops, so not really sure what there was to gain, especially with how tire wear is and how pace that they would have compared to other the other cars around them. So definitely a mistake there for him to not only do that, but then also race his teammate hard and delay or derail whatever pace that he was on for Hamilton to improve his finish there. So could have been a little bit higher finish for Hamilton, we'll see, but clearly shows that you have two McLaren teammates working together, but then the the Mercedes guys, their engine suppliers, they're definitely not working as well together currently. So bit of an interesting theatric that we're seeing right now there. But yeah, a lot of interesting carnage that kind of went on throughout this race. We saw Logan Sargent get into it with Valtteri Bottas, and then they retired with damage. Lance Stroll retired out of the race with a broken rear wing. And with another retirement with Alex Albon and everything, and then of course mentioned Perez already. So definitely a kind of an eventful race there. I mean, not like Texas or anything like that, but definitely for what we expect to see in Japan here in Formula One. Definitely kind of eventful there towards the end. So we'll see how it goes here after coming up, and I think they're the U.S. Grand Prix, or no, Qatar Grand Prix is next. So we'll see how they perform there, and sure it'll be more of the same up front. But interested now in this dynamic that we're seeing with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton.
Definitely something that we're going to have to keep track of as the rest of the season goes on. But definitely concur with everything you were saying there in terms of what the race was and how some of these teams are going about it. I mean, Logan Sargent, you mentioned him. He wrecked his car in qualifying, and which is yet another incident, unforced error. And now there's only one seat left that hasn't been announced, and it's his. And he hasn't scored a point this year, while Alex Albon has scored a good amount relative to what Williams has been over the last few years. So it's something you have to look at. Is Williams going to go and look at the likes of a Mick Schumacher or some other, would they go Liam Lawson since they already got one Red Bull guy? Do they go some other way? It's something to be looked at. Logan Sargent has a week off to go and reset and going to a new track. Essentially, they haven't been there in a couple of years, so the data will be different with this car compared to the car that they had a couple of years ago. So maybe an opportunity for him to go and overcome some of these mistakes that he's had recently. And yeah, Valtteri Bottas just had a nightmare weekend for him, and then there was there was a double retirement, of course, for Williams and mentioned, and Stroll coming back from the wreck at Singapore had that wing failure, as Josh mentioned. So that was that for the Japanese Grand Prix, and next week we'll get into the Qatar Grand Prix and what to expect from there, other behind fish lips. He has I have to go and do the math here. It's such a big lead at this point. It's like they talked about it on the broadcast that he could lock up the championship in the sprint race at Qatar with a good result or with a win or whatever. 177 point lead in the Drivers' Championship. Sergio Perez right now is 33 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Lewis is 16 points ahead of Fernando Alonso for third in the Drivers' Championship. Carlos Sainz rounds out the top five. He's 24 points behind Alonso and 15 points ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris is tied with George Russell at 115 points, so 20 points behind Leclerc. And it's interesting to see, considering how hard Russell has been going relative to what he's been doing. Piastri moves up into the top 10 with that podium finish. Stroll gets back into the top 10, or is actually in the top 10, even though he didn't score any points. He's a point ahead of Pierre Gasly and 9 points ahead of Esteban Ocon there. Everybody else. Yeah. So, and Liam Lawson coming off of the points he scored at Singapore. In terms of the teams championship, as I mentioned, Red Balls gets another Constructors Championship, so good for them. And Mercedes is 20 points ahead of Ferrari for second in the constructors. Aston Martin's basically in their own world in fourth, because what is it, for 64 points behind Ferrari? They're not making that up, especially when you only have one driver. McLaren is in their own world as well in fifth. Alpine, same. The curiosity is essentially Williams, Haas, Alpha Sauber, and Alpha Tauri. Alpha Tauri is 5 points behind Alpha Sauber, and then Haas is 2 points ahead of Alfa Romeo. Williams is 9 points ahead of Haas in the constructors. All right, so the one piece of news that came up today was the release of the 2023 IndyCar or 2024 IndyCar Series schedule. And what it is, there's going to be that non-points exhibition race at the Thermal Club. There's going to be 2 massive gaps in the schedule itself due to the gap that they're going to have of a month between the non-points race in Long Beach is I'm curious to find out what that is about. Of course, they're going to open with St. Petersburg as they have for many years. They'll 2 weeks later go to the Thermal Club. Then they take a month off, go to Long Beach back to back with Bubba, and then they take a week or so, at least a week off, and then they'll go to do the IMS road course. Thankfully, the only one race that they're going to run there because it's gotten old. Indy 500, of course, qualifying and the race itself. After the 500, they're going to go straight into 2 races, Detroit and then Road America. So that'll be a busy portion of the schedule. They'll take a couple of weeks off and go to Laguna Seca in June, so it'll be boiling hot. Then they'll take another 2 weeks off and go to Mid-Ohio, which will be followed up by Iowa Speedway and the streets of Toronto before the Olympic break takes place. And then they'll be off for another month there and come back with Gateway. And they'll after they return, it'll be pretty busy. They'll come back and run 4 races in quick succession with Gateway, Portland, and the return of the Milwaukee Mile for the first time since, trying to remember the last time they ran at the Milwaukee Mile, but I guess I'll scroll here through Joey Barnes, former guest of our show, posted this story. So trying to see here if he posted it right there. Looking at
Is it
such a
Milwaukee
first time
was last
since
since 2017?
It says in his story on motorsport.com 2015. No.
Okay, 2015. That's about right. I remember. Yeah.
So in all of that, we talk about Texas Motor Speedway, and I'm outspoken on how much I dislike the place. And for the first time since, what does it say? Since 1997 or something. So the first time since 1997, there won't be a race at Texas Motor Speedway because of the scheduling, likely based on the fact that NASCAR wants to move an SMI or whatever they want to move it to the spring, which is interesting because what is going to be put in lieu of that race? What are you going to do? You're going to put Atlanta? You can put one of those shitty Atlanta races in there so you can have another back. Well, yeah, so I was going on one thing, but it's another, like the map, NASCAR Chasm had the map of where all the races take place, and you just have basically the central and mountain time zone for the most part doesn't have anything. And then the East Coast, the Northeast is completely barren. And I'm like, what kind of series are you trying to run when you're neglecting whole swaths of the country? Now, granted, that mountain and central time zone, once you get past Indiana and Iowa, wherever, you're not exactly sitting there with lots of racetrack options. But when it comes to the Northeast, you have Poconos, Josh mentioned, but the drivers don't want to go there because they say it's dangerous. Any super speedway race is dangerous. I'm not discounting what they feel, but they were approved. It's been an approved racetrack. Pocono is willing to make changes to accommodate the Indy cars. They only have the one weekend now with NASCAR, so it would make a lot of sense. Watkins Glen is another one, but they're owned by ISC, so that basically is going nowhere fast. Lime Rock Park is probably too short for Indy cars, but they run tracks where Portland is essentially less than a minute, so that's a 2-mile track. So you got Lime Rock, you have New Hampshire, which they haven't been back to since that epic day, and I think the Double Birds Day in 2011 with William Power, with the rain and all that. But I mean, you look at those are just some of the examples. You have Richmond, which is leaning towards the southeast, of course. They ran there many years. Richmond doesn't exactly put on great NASCAR racing, so why wouldn't you go and at least possibly try? I'm trying to think. You have Pittsburgh Motorsports Park, which they run for the Moto America. You have, I'm trying to think of what else on top of that in my head that they've ran over the years. I think I pretty
Baltimore.
much. Well, no, that's yeah. Baltimore's done. Unfortunately, it went down with the lobster, but the Baltimore Orioles are going to the playoffs, so first time in many years. So credit to them. Yeah, there's not. I mean, it's just a shame they don't go to Watkins Glen. It pisses me off because Indy cars are built for that racetrack, and it's just a waste. I mean, they do have the 6 hours at the Glen, which is great, but NASCAR basically uses all the runoff to go and use it as a racetrack, which is stupid. So, I mean, it's not the best product relative to what the Indy cars could put on running the full circuit. I mean, I'm happy to see the Milwaukee Mile back, of course. It's historic, classic, running a doubleheader on Labor Day weekend, so that will be interesting how that goes. They're running multiple doubleheaders. Of course, Iowa continues as a doubleheader, but they're going to go back to running at night, I believe. So I think they're going to run at night for Iowa because it was so freaking hot. I assume that they're going to run there at Iowa Speed, one being a Saturday night race. So they'll run Saturday night at Iowa and then follow back up with a Sunday afternoon matinee for their doubleheader. The only big oval that they have is, of course, Indianapolis. No other big ovals. Just remembered Homestead. There's another one. But that's, of course, closer to you, Josh. That's a track that would be perfect for Indy cars. It's very rough, but it would be a challenge. I'm trying to think of other tracks that have hosted IndyCar over the years, but Homestead to me would be a great one. But all these ISC tracks are not going to go and have the IndyCar series there for whatever reason, even though Penske can make deals with anybody. But I don't mind Texas Motor Speedway dropping off because I think it's a dump anyway. I don't understand the 1 month gap between the non-points race and Long Beach. Granted, that non-points race was put in, or else it would have been a 6-week gap from the season opener to at St. Petersburg to Long Beach, which is insane. Cutting down to one IMS road course race, which is good since it looks like, of course, NASCAR is going to go back to the oval, so less usage of the road course. They'll have the IMSA endurance race there, but so they won't. So if you really love that course, then you'll get that. Road America a little earlier than it was. Laguna Seca is going to be boiling hot. Mid Ohio into 2 races, Iowa, Toronto, before the Olympic break, and then 3 oval races, short, small road course, and then Nashville will be the season finale. Or what do you think about this schedule, Josh? I mean, stays at 17 races as it has been for many years, but omitting Texas Motor Speedway, adding back the Milwaukee Mile on Labor Day weekend, and having 2 massive gaps in the schedule. One that I don't really know how they haven't explained, and the other one based on the Paris Olympics and NBC, of course, having to cover those. But what do you think of this schedule for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I mean, I know you don't like Texas. I kind of like Texas as an IndyCar track more than I do a NASCAR track. So I thought the Texas race this year was pretty good, but that might have been a one-time only thing, and it would have been closer to what we've seen in the past if they continued there. But on one hand, you lose Texas, which might be a good thing, but on the other hand, you don't have a super speedway or a speedway oval outside of the Indianapolis 500, and I feel like you need at least one other super speedway race besides the 500. And I think for IndyCar, we've seen great races over the years, whether it was in kart or the IRL or IndyCar, where they raced on the big ovals, and I think it shows how unique oval racing is. I mean, obviously we have the short track racing, but with Iowa and Milwaukee Mile, but and Gateway, but I think there's a missed opportunity to not have a bigger than 1 mile oval on the schedule here. So I would have liked I think Pocono should be back on the schedule. If not Pocono, I mean, why can't they do Michigan? Michigan,
Kansas,
Chicago, Kentucky's not even being used.
Yeah,
I mean, I know the banking is all wonky and everything because they decided to screw it up for NASCAR, but I mean, it's basically a almost like Texas in terms of the layout there. So you're almost, you're gaining the same type of racing in a different area. So, and I guess you would fill one area on the map that, you were talking about earlier that they posted with the amount of states. And I mean, really, they're consolidating to the Midwest, which is kind of where IndyCar is basically known culturally. You have that Midwest section that, where, around Indiana, which is where they're consolidating to, and then the West Coast, which, still has some racing history, obviously, with the Long Beach Grand Prix and Laguna Seca. But, other than that, in Florida as well with St. Petersburg. But, other than that, it's all consolidated towards the Midwest and Canada. So, this is an interesting schedule. I mean, that's part of it, not having an oval race. You have the big gap at the beginning of the year, and then I think you also have the other big gap at the end of the year. I mean, it's kind of, F1 does have their summer break, but that's, always planned. They've always had it. But, I feel like for IndyCar, they're a series that, I think if they want more exposure or more audience, that, they need to have as much exposure as possible. And, that, I think 2-month gaps in the schedule really hurt that ability to gain fans throughout the year and continue momentum of when the next race is. And then on top of that, being tied to NBC, I mean, we like their coverage in terms of what they're able to do. I think they do a great job covering the series, but I think the corporation NBC, I don't know if that's hurting them or not, because you're tied to the Olympics, and now they're putting 2 races on Peacock Network, going to streaming only. So I'm not sure how much I like that either, because Peacock, not everybody has Peacock. I don't know what the numbers are, but I bet to say that there's not as many Peacock subscribers as there are like Disney Plus, Hulu, things like that. I mean, obviously Disney. I mean, we can get into the corporations and stuff of how how much they're in controlling the markets and stuff when it comes to TV shares and everything, because obviously a lot of people have Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN because that's all bundled together. But Peacock isn't the same unless you're a Comcast Xfinity subscriber there. So definitely a issue there that you have to look at in terms of being able to grow the audience. And you wonder with ESPN going back to Formula One, you have to wonder if IndyCar should they go back to ESPN now that they're beginning to come back to motorsports and everything. Because obviously, in NBC, they have NASCAR, they have the Olympics. I mean, they have a lot of stuff on NBC, and you wonder if ESPN, maybe there's more room, or possibly even CBS, trying to get back into motorsports and giving them more, I guess, maneuverability on when to have races, so they're not tied to external events like the Olympics or being forced. I mean, being forced to be on stream. I think they'd be on network a lot more often with CBS. I mean, they still have the NFL to compete with, and they'd probably end at the same time. But there's maybe more opportunity to have continuity in the schedule if you went with a different broadcast network. But yeah, there's a lot to take away from this race, or from this schedule news release. But we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I'm sure the racing will be great. And then one thing I'll say is that they should flip the first two events on the schedule. The Thermal Club should be the first one, being a non-points event, and that actually would build up momentum. I mean, obviously you have drivers going for $1 million, get interest in them going for $1 million first before they start the year, and then go to St. Petersburg. I feel like that would be better in terms of building an audience and building momentum. But what do I know? Just some guy here on the internet talking about the schedule. So somebody call Roger Penske and ask him what the hell are you doing. So we'll see how it goes next year.
It's really Mark Miles. That's who we'd have to talk to, because that puppet head is the one that seemingly is the person that sits in front of everything for IndyCar. Him and Jay Fry. Those are the two people. I mean, it's a good point you made, like putting the non-points race to start the year. You have build up, you can promote it and say, okay, we're going to start. We've had this long layoff, but we have spring training or whatever, and lead into that race. That would be a good way to do it. And then after that, you take a couple of weeks off and say, well, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to start the 2024 season in the points championship at St. Petersburg. And that would be probably a much more logical way. But I mean, it's a good point you brought up there. I agree with the CBS take. I mean, or one of the people that we are in the fantasy league with, he works for CBS and CBS Sports and stuff, and they're invested in football mainly, but you look at some of these other oddball sports that it's football and golf for sure, but then after that I think they have different soccer leagues, they have cornhole, there's a couple other ones, but really they have oddball stuff, and they have a sports network separate that really needs content. They do show racing on that network, but it's usually tape delayed stuff. So they would be the one that I would say if it would make a lot of sense for them to move. I mean, NBC they've given IndyCar a platform to where they can be on the main NBC channel, largely because they got rid of the sports network. But at least you're on main NBC for the most part, outside of 2 races next year. They do a great job, as Josh mentioned, but being at the mercy of NBC is not exactly the greatest way to run a series. Now, NASCAR is going to run through their series or season even though the Olympics is going on, which is how you should do things. I mean, Formula One will have their break essentially, their summer break around Olympic time anyway, so it kind of works out for them. But we will see what happens with that and how things move forward in terms of the IndyCar series. And now that they are in their the longest off season in all of sports, I think will be starting or commencing here after the last couple weeks in already. Move forward to week 3 recap, fantasy team updates. I'm going to give Josh the floor here in a moment because I know he's got plenty to stew over. Niners end up on Thursday night playing the Giants. Was a relatively tight contest for a period of time, but the pass rush of the 49ers and the defense in general made Daniel Jones into an ordinary player. The Niners with Brock Purdy was just throwing darts to Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey was able to run roughshod on him. Trent Williams punched Ashawn Williams or whatever the hell his name is. So that was funny. Or Ashawn Jenkins. I forget what the hell his name is, but he's some random that used to be on the Rams. Jake Moody made his field goals with relative ease. So, I mean, it wasn't straightforward initially, but it became straightforward by the end of it. Niners dominated, go to 3-0, and the way this week has gone, they're one of the only undefeated teams left in the NFL. The Eagles end up getting a victory here on Monday Night Football, so they stay undefeated, even though, to be fair, they could be 1-2 right now. In terms of other news, other things going on, the nobody wants to win bowl between the Chargers and the Vikings. The Chargers go for it on their own 24-yard line and try to run and fail. Then Minnesota has a chance from the plus 24-yard line, end up getting a first down, completely botch the 2-minute drill situation, and then Kirk Cousins gets a pass deflected and throws an interception, which is pretty pathetic. But Josh, when it comes to Justin Herbert, he got 400 yards yesterday. So yet again, he's basically carrying the organization on his back. Mike Williams got hurt again, of course, because he gets hurt every year, but this time it's a season ender with the ACL. But the story, I think, was the Miami Dolphins putting a 70 burger on the Denver Broncos, and I think they could have kept on going, really. If Mike McDaniel really wanted to, I think he could have really given them he could have went old country way on them and really did them dirty, broke his back, make him mumble like the Iron Sheik used to do, because that is a pathetic performance by the Denver Broncos. I mean, the jokes was like, oh, it's like playing FCS versus an FBS team and all that. I'm like, this is an NFL football team. This is a team that's owned by one of the richest people in the world, and they didn't even bother to show up. Like, yeah, they scored 20 points. Okay, fine. But you lost by 50 points. 50 points in an NFL game. They were literally a field goal away from tying the all-time record for the highest point total ever in an NFL game. The Devon Arcane or whatever had 60-something points in the Fall Brawl League. He's on the waiver wire. Raheem Mostert had I don't know how many points. It's insane how many points all these guys scored. But I mean, Miami is going to be very tough to deal with. They're going to have a great matchup with Buffalo here this coming weekend. And unfortunately, it's at 1 o'clock instead of being on Sunday Night Football because, you know, we have to end up putting up with the scheduling and how bad things are or whatever. But in terms, for me, fantasy wise, I've been eliminated in my survival pools, so that's fine. But I'm going 3-1 this week in fantasy. The Dynasty League has gone really bad for Vic and I, but it is what it is. Niners are winning. Finally got a couple breaks. So I'll take that this week, and we'll keep on working. So yeah, Josh, Jacksonville ends up. I don't know what you can say about what Jacksonville did yesterday. The number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, C.J. Stroud, basically was able to pick apart the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans with DeMeco Ryans go into a rival's home stadium and take a major victory here in a division that, as we look at it more and more, is wide open. But I don't think that when we were looking at this division as, leading up to the season and all that, it was going to be wide open. Figure that Jacksonville was going to kind of run away with it. But unfortunately, the start of this season has not worked out that way, Josh.
Yeah, it's not worked out as the way we thought it would be. Week 1, they were sloppy. Last week, you can chalk it up to going up against the Chiefs and everything, but this week they were still sloppy on offense the first half, and they get down to a 17-point deficit, which honestly I was like, well, they can come back before, they'll just have to do it again just like we did last year, and looked like maybe they were going to start doing that. They got a touchdown, but then gave up an unbelievable punt return to a fullback, and then after that I was like, yeah, we probably deserve to lose if you give up a kick return to a fullback like that, and that was just unbelievable to see them give up that type of play to somebody like that. So they couldn't rush the passer, didn't sack C.J. Stroud, who's already been sacked 11 times so far to start the year, and they couldn't sack him. So clearly is an issue with the defensive line again. Last week they were able to get pressure on Mahomes and affect him, and they had pressure on Anthony Richardson in week 1, but they weren't able to do anything with it this week. So I don't know. I don't know what happened this week. Clearly it seems like the Texans were ready to play. I think the Jags, for whatever reason, weren't ready to play. It's always seems to kind of feel like that, where you have one team that's not won yet, clearly an underdog, and their coach locks them in, gets them ready to play, and then the other team that's clearly favored, that should win, ends up laying an egg, and that's exactly what happened there. So honestly, I have no idea what to say about that game. They definitely should have won that game. I don't even know if you can even say that, but they had some missed opportunities in the first half. Calvin Ridley dropping passes, so maybe he's still gambling and point shaving or something like that. You had that happen, missed kickoffs. The kickoff return by the fullback, as already said, and everything. So, that was a really bad game that shouldn't have happened. And now they got to go to London and try to do better. And it's funny to me that they talk about the stadium this week. There's begin to talk about, we need to build the stadium, and then some poll comes out and says that a lot of residents aren't in favor of the current deal that they're proposing, where they split 50-50 on a $1 million or $2 million or $2 billion or $1 billion stadium and everything, and which I forget I didn't look at the poll, but the poll was kind of poorly worded, and then kind of made it for easy headlines that they don't really want to build a stadium in Jacksonville, or the citizens don't want a stadium, and then then the ownership or president of the team has to come out and make a statement saying that, we if you guys want a stadium, you got to be able to, or keep the Jaguars in Jacksonville, then you need to build a stadium or something like that. So interesting how we follow up those that week in the news like that with the big loss, and then on top of that, people, when they don't play good, nobody comes to the stadium, and it's super hot outside during during the week or during the day in September in Jacksonville, open-ended stadium like that. So, going to get hot. And then you have the scoreboards blocking the breeze and everything. So, your people cook during the daytime there. But yeah, just a poor way to, have that and then kill a lot of the hype that, they had last season, which, basically, maybe that's basically what they need. Maybe they need that to stop believing in their own hype. Honestly, I feel like that's what happened to the 2018 Jags. I mean, they had Bortles at QB, but I feel like they just believed in their own hype a little bit too much, and that kind of led to the downfall and everything. So you have that, and now they lose, so maybe they have lower expectations, and they can turn it around next week in London and get right against the Falcons, which Falcons have been playing good as well. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just unfortunate. Yeah, not the way we want to start the season, but I mean, it's early. I'll say that it's only week 3. Still a long way to go. I mean, not to make any comparisons or anything like that, but obviously, last year was the thing, 2-6 and come back to make the playoffs and go into the second round of the playoffs. But, look at even other teams, Tom Brady looked like he was finished, versus the Chiefs many years ago on Monday Night Football and got benched for Jimmy G. And then they came back and, completely dismantled the Cincinnati Bengals and then, basically kicked off Tom Brady's second run at rings that he had, in the end of his career. So, I mean, look at it like that. I mean, it's still pretty early. So, yeah, they still have time to get it turned around together. I mean, there's obviously a lot of concern, which they should have, but, going into week 4, there's still time to turn around and get on, get some momentum back. You have these 2 London games, and then I'm going to be attending the Colts game, in 2 weeks. So, we'll see how that goes and, how they are able to respond to this. But yeah, it's been a lot of struggles so far. I mean, play calling allegedly might be an issue. I think, Calvin Ridley's been an issue. I was joking about what I said earlier, but, I think just maybe they have too many choices. When you have too many guys, you're trying to scheme the ball to, you end up with a lot of, I think they're definitely trying to force a lot of things. They're forcing Ridley, to try to get him targets and stuff. They're, getting a lot of targets to Jamal Agnew for some reason. He's the one that's been turning the ball over, so maybe stop doing that. Even though he's a dynamic offensive weapon, he's not a real wide receiver, so he shouldn't be running out patterns and everything. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues so far. So we'll see how Doug Peterson is able to get them to, refocus in and lock in for, this next week here in London. So, yeah, disappointing there, and looking at, paying attention to fantasy wise for me, paying attention to the Bengals and Rams, and then the Eagles and the Bucks game, which just ended. Yeah, losing right now. I was winning in fantasy, but I've been caught up to still pretty tight 6-point deficit now. I was leading going into today by 20 points, and Joe Burrow has made it up now. Sam Hubbard, I need Sam Hubbard and Luke Wilson on the Bengals to go out and put up big games here with quarter and 3 minutes to go in this game. So we'll see what happens. Be interesting if I could pull it out, but the more we go on, Joe Burrow is going to have enough chances, even though he's hurt and everything. So we'll see how that goes, but might have the same record here in a little bit, depending on how this goes, as the Jags. So we'll see.
Yeah, the Bengals trying to go and kind of start their season, give themselves a little bit of give that jump start, even with not 100% Joe Burrow. Point scoring, I was just checking the points. I mean, Josh, you're in a close matchup against Jeff. Looks like it could come down to the wire, but need some help there. Joe and Luke ended up, it's a 1-point game between those two, which is insane. And 252 for Joe and 251 point for Luke. Just going through some of these teams. I mean, in Joe's case, he has Keenan Allen, who threw a pass touchdown, and he had pass first. Yeah, the first downs also help with that. He had Keenan Allen, Tony Pollard, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts run pass TD, 2 interceptions, 1 rush TD. Yeah, and he had a solo tackle. Look at that. Aiden Hutchinson had a huge game. TJ Watt. He had Miles Sanders. And then on the other side, Luke had Tyreek Hill. Olave was pretty good. McCaffrey, Mostert, A.J. Brown. Desmond Ridder didn't do shit. And he got 33 points out of Zaire Franklin, 24 points out of Holland. And he actually left points on the bench, too, considering he has Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Gabe Davis, T.J. Hawkinson. Joe has Russell Wilson on the bench and Okerley or whatever, but that's an insane point score. I guess that's what now counting the first downs, putting the first down points into play has definitely changed things up in terms of how these scores go. All right, so let's move forward to a pretty brief GSP roundup for this week. MotoGP and Moto2 were at the Bud International Circuit. First race in India in a decade. They used to have Formula One there for a few years, and Sebastian Vettel dominated when they raced the Indian Grand Prix for Formula One. The Indian Grand Prix for the MotoGP was not as straightforward. Riders that have struggled and teams that have struggled this year for a good amount of it end up getting big time results. Pecco Bagnaia falls out of a guaranteed second place, and loses a bunch of points in the process. Marco Bezzecchi gets his third win of 2023. Jorge Martin was basically passing out at the end of the race, but ends up finishing second. Fabio Quartararo gets the podium for Yamaha. Brad Binder, Joan Mir finishes fifth, best finish of the season for him on the Repsol Honda. Franco Morbidelli seventh. Marc Marquez dumped it while he was in the top five, recovered to ninth. The Hondas were competitive all weekend. The Yamahas, or at least Quartararo, was reasonably competitive. And it was a challenging racetrack for sure. Jack Miller was nowhere. It was in no man's land. Otherwise, I mean, Binder had a good weekend, but Jack Miller had a nightmare weekend. D.G. Antonio had to retire. Bagnaia, of course, mentioned he crashed. Espargaro had mechanical issues or heat issues with the heat affecting his Aprilia. Augusto Fernandez crashed out of the race. And that, I mean, the point standings right now, leading into this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix trying to get the points standings. There you go. It's such a weird, not a great website, this thing. So Pecco Bagnaia leads by 13 points. Gave up 20. I mean, should have been 30 something points, but he crashes and gives away those points there. Marco Bezzecchi is 44 points behind in third. Binder is in his own in his own position there in fourth. Alex Espargaro and Zarco have a battle for fifth. Vinales and Marini for seventh. Jack Miller, Alex Marquez, and Fabio Quartararo for the last couple of spots in the top 10. In Moto2, Pedro Acosta gets another victory. Tony Arbolino second, and Joe Roberts gets a podium finish for Italtrans Racing Team, finishes 6.5 seconds off behind Acosta. So a big result for Joe Roberts, getting a podium. Great to see for sure in what has been a pretty difficult year for him. Sean Dillon Kelly, it finally happened. Sean Dillon Kelly has scored his first point in Moto2. He finished 15th and got one solitary point in his fill-in ride here for Forward Racing. But hey, at least he got a point. So that's a pretty big deal. Celestino Vietti was eliminated, didn't even start the race. Contra didn't crash on the first lap. Jake Dixon, issues, and Aaron Canet as well. So pretty cool. Americans end up having a decent result there. So in Moto2, leading into the Japanese Grand Prix, Arbolino is 39 points behind Pedro Acosta. Jake Dixon and Aaron Canet. I mean, they're in. Jake Dixon's on his own. Aaron Canet is tied with Alonso Lopez. Celestino Vietti didn't race, but he's still in the mix there, 4th through 6th. Philippe Salek and Gonzalez and Chantra, Allgaier, they're all 9 points separate those four riders. Joe Roberts with his podium gets to within 5 points of Albert Arenas. He would need another one to probably get himself closer towards the likes of Garcia, Ogura, and Lowe's. And then scroll through. SDK moves himself up now to 26th in the points with his first career points in Moto2. There are riders, still plenty of riders that haven't scored or that are full-time riders itself. So credit to Sean Dillon Kelly. We'll move to World Superbikes. World Superbikes last week at Aragon. Michael Ruben Rinaldi wins race 1 over Toprak Raskatlioglu and Johnny Ray. The Superpole race saw Alvaro Bautista over Ray and Raskatlioglu. And then in race 2, Bautista gets the victory over Raskatlioglu and Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Trying to see where race 1, trying to get the results just out of curiosity. Garrett Gerloff finished 8th in race 1. In the Superpole race, saw Garrett Gerloff finish 9th, and Garrett Gerloff finished 10th in race 2 at Aragon. So pretty consistent where he was at all weekend there. Led the BMW contingent the whole weekend, beat the factory guys. So something to look at for sure. Right now, Garrett Gerloff is 7 points behind Iker Lackawanna, 8 points behind Scott Redding. Argater is 21 points ahead of him for 10th, 22 points behind Alex Lowe's, who's in 9th. So he'll need a couple of big results to move himself towards the top 10, but consistency is coming along as the season goes on. And they're moving to this weekend. They'll be racing at the Algarve for the Portuguese round of the World Superbike Championship before they take a month off essentially for the last round of this year, round, which will be at Jerez to close out this season. Move forward. So yeah, Rally Chile taking place this weekend for the WRC. In terms of that, I mean, long story short, Kalle Rovanperä trying to repeat as WRC world champion. So we'll see how he's able to handle the terrain there. And Kalle Rovanperä and then his teammates, Efren Evans, Takamoto Katsuda, so the 3 Toyotas there. Hyundai has Thierry Neuville, Esa-Pekka Lappi, and Teemu Suninen. Ford will have 4 Pumas this weekend. Tanak, Pierre-Louis Loubet, the regular drivers, then Gregoire Munster and Alberto Heller. in the Fords. So 4 Fords, the 3 Hyundais, and 3 Toyotas make up the Rally 1 category. The point standings right now, championship standings, Cali Rovanpera is up by 33 points on Efren Evans with 3 rounds to go in this season. So has a chance with a good result to get himself one step closer to repeating as World Rally Champion. In manufacturer standings, Toyota leads by nearly 100 points over Hyundai. So that's probably going to be more likely the scenario there. They have a co-driver standing, so Cali Rovanpera's co-driver over the Efren Evans co-driver, et cetera, et cetera. We'll go into all that, what took place next week in the GSP. All right, so let's get into the NASCAR Cup and Xfinity Series, or NASCAR Cup and Trucks. They'll be racing at Talladega Super Speedway for the usual fall race, what was the EA Sports 500, the Die Hard 500, etc., etc. We'll start with the Truck Series race, the Love's RV Stop 250, 40 trucks for 36 spots. You have to go back out just to check. Yeah, nobody listed in the Serial 1 Premium E-Bikes 1 truck for Tricon. You have the 02 for Young's, doesn't have anybody. Nick Sanchez, Corey Roper in the 04. Go Jennifer Joe Cobb, probably going to fail to qualify. Corey Heim, of course, doesn't have any pressure, so he's free rolling. Haley Deegan, coming off of watching her little brother win the Super Motocross 250 championship with his second place finish in the Moto number 2. And then in the 450 class, it was Jet Lawrence ended up getting that victory and $1 million, $500,000 for Hayden Deegan there. And go through here, Taylor, Christian Eckes, Greg Van Alst in the Youngs 20, Jason M. White and 22. Chandler Smith mentioned earlier, he'll be in the 25 for Rackley War. Brian Doza for FDNY, probably going to DNQ. Ryan Vargas in the 30, coming back from Oschersleben, driving the NASCAR, whatever, Euro Series. He had Jesse Punch over there as well. And get through some of these other people. Yeah, Brett Holmes, who's Alabama guy, and come close to winning there. Trying to get, you have 34 data. Yeah, so Brett Moffitt will be in a second Front Row Motorsports truck. Bailey Curry in the 41. Tyler Hill in the 56 for the family team. Jake Drew in the 61 for Hattori. Parker Kligerman racing the 75, of course, for Anderson Motorsports. Clay Greenfield racing number 95 for GK Racing. And yeah, so that's the field right there. 40 trucks, 36 spots. Let's go and check out the picks. You closed out. I had the first pick last week, so you get first dibs on your regular picks, unless you want to combine. Well, honestly, I think you should go and do your picks. I'll do mine, and then we can call in the algorithm after. So what are you looking at, Josh, for the Truck Series at Talladega?
Yeah, I mean, this one's going to be a wild one for sure. There's a lot of guys that are inexperienced in this field that, have never, won anything here at Talladega, but, honestly, go with experience here in terms of somebody that can win on a plate track. So I'm going to go with Ben Rhodes this weekend in the 99. He's won in Daytona before, so, let's see if he can do something here at Talladega, kind of revive his season, as it is going in the playoffs.
And then who's your wild card?
Right, wild card. Yeah, I'll go with Nick Sanchez this weekend as my wild card. So no, I'm looking at the wrong guy. No, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, no. You know what? I'll just go with our classic wild card pick, Roger Carruth. You
Yeah.
know, seeing how he's done this past couple of races, we'll see if he can do it on a restrictor plate track here.
Or yeah, wild card. So yep, we usual wild card choice is Raja Carruth. So Ben Rhodes, Raja Carruth there. For me, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pick Zane Smith because of the help that he's gonna have now that Brett Moffitt is a second truck entered in this race. He's of course shown an ability to race well on restrictor plate tracks, especially Daytona. Wild card pick. I mean, there's low hanging fruit. I'm gonna go with Chandler Smith because that team is the defending winner of the race. Chandler Smith has built up his experience over the year in the Xfinity Series. He's got experience, of course, in the trucks for a couple of years. So I'm going to go with the Chandler Smith wild card. So those are picks. What does the Tate Fogelman... This race was where the Tate Fogelman algorithm came to be when it picked out Tate Fogelman to win, and he was wrecking sideways but ended up winning this truck race. Probably should have picked I wonder if it's going to pick another Young's Motorsports truck because it seems like Young's Motorsports has a way of winning at this racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 years now since, well, at least 2 years to this Talladega race that it's been running now. So, yeah, let's give it a run here and see what it gives us. Okay, 12. Well, ironically, that's the first.
Spencer Boyd, is that? Yeah. Spencer Boyd, who is a former winner of this race. A couple of years ago, he actually did win this race. So
yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, it almost said 10 there for a second. It flashed 10 there on the result page, but or row, but it changed to 12 for some reason. I think it knows that maybe Jennifer Jo Cobb, that might be a little bit too far out there. So 12 is a lot more reasonable than Spencer Boyd.
Yeah, I mean, she has to actually make the show. She has a bigger problem with just making the show, let alone having pace to somehow or another win, which is unless she has a big motor or two motors connected and then is running a truck from 1995 or something. I don't think there's any chance in hell that she could win. So Spencer Boyd, not bad. Now it gives me more reason to watch the truck race because I'm curious to see how the Young's Motorsports vehicles do since you have the 02 doesn't have a driver as of now announced. Spencer Boyd, a former winner, of course, as I mentioned. Greg Van Alst, who won at Daytona earlier this year in the ARCA Series. So they have an interesting group there for who can go out there and possibly get a victory. The Cup Series, the Yellowwood 500 at Talladega has mentioned 38 cars for 40 spots, so nobody failing to qualify. We'll go through some of the sponsors and drivers. Chastain will be with Worldwide Express, Cindric Discount Tire, Austin Dillon Bass Pro, Busch Light Camo for Harv, Valvoline for Larson, Solomon Plumbing for Brad Keselowski, Gainbridge on the 7 for LaJoy, X World Wallet for Kyle Busch, who comes off of winning in the spring at Talladega, Lumar Window Film for William Clyde Elliott II, Denny Hamlin actually running the Mavis Tires scheme this weekend. Menards and Pennzoil for Ryan Blaney, a multi-time winner at Talladega. Quick Tie Products and for Chandler Smith and Colleague. One half of the Shake and Bake is Chase Briscoe running the Old Spice scheme. Brennan Poole, Finance Pro Plus in the 15. Action Industries for AJ Allmendinger. Build Submarines for Christopher Buscher. Bass Pro Shops for Martin Truex Jr., DeWalt, Christopher Bell, Dex Imaging for Harrison Burton. Darrell Wallace Jr., Leidos, Exalta on the 24 for Byron. Morris Shea Bridge Company, Inc., whatever that is, for Justin Haley. Loves Travel Stops for Michael McDowell. Riley Herbst in a Front Row Motorsports vehicle. They don't have anybody listed. When he ran the last time, I swear he was driving a Sunny D car. The last time he raced, I think it was at Daytona. I don't know. Maybe we'll see what happens with that. Georgia Peanuts for Todd Gilliland. Wonder Bread for Ryan Preece or Ricky Bobby, I guess, for this weekend. Carson Hocevar will continue to fill in at the number 42 for Legacy. McDonald's will be on the 45 for Tyler Reddick. Richard will have Sara Lee Artisanal Bakery Bread. Biohaven Jacob Companies for JJ Haley. Keebler Gibbs has Monster Energy. Ty Dillon Ferris Commercial Mowers. BJ McLeod with Gunk. And then Daniel Suarez with Tootsie's on the car. All right, so I get to go first. And the super speedways, the Fords, definitely they're not great in a lot of areas, but on the super speedways they seem to have good pace, and they're able to draft together, since now it's become this manufacturer deal. It is a wild card type of race. You look at the way the playoff standings are, and I mean I'm leaning one of two ways, but what I'm going to say is I'm going to keep on doing this. I might as well. I'm going to say Brad Keselowski gets the victory at Talladega. His last win was at Talladega in 2021 in the spring in the Penske 2 car. Brad breaks his winless streak at Talladega and advances into the round of 8 in the process. My wild card for this weekend will be, and why not? I'm just going to go Carson Hocevar. Why not? He's been running really, really well since he's jumped into that 42 car. So why not go and carry it over into racing at Talladega? So those are my picks. Josh, what say you?
Yeah, I think for me this weekend, I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney this weekend to win. He's been good at Talladega in the past. Has won in the playoffs at Talladega in the past. Should have won probably at Talladega back in the spring. Of course, got in last lap wreck with Bubba Wallace there, so was on the tail end of that. So definitely had a good car, and he's been a driver that's performed well at plate tracks. So I'm going to go with him to win this weekend. And then my wild card pick, I'm actually going to go with the other Legacy Motorsport car and Eric Jones. He's performed pretty well in Talladega in the past, and definitely he's had a lot of experience. Won a restrictor plate race, super speedway race with the 20 car back in 2018 at Joe Gibbs. So he definitely knows how to run up front there. So yeah, I'll go with him as my wild card for this weekend.
And then what does the Tate Fogelman algorithm say for the winner this weekend in the Yellowwood 500?
Oh, it says that, wow, we've never had a double here. It's picked Brad Keselowski.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, so that's something. We will see. So I have to go. Give me a second here. I'm just going and updating that. So the Tate Fogelman algorithm says Brad Keselowski.
It's doubling down on you.
So I guess since Josh, you're usually are very accurate in your choices, but the algorithm, you can't really go wrong with the Tate Fogelman algorithm. It has come through with some entertaining results, but Brad Keselowski, that's a first for as you mentioned. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I guess if you like the 6 car, this might be the weekend. It's either that or you'll end up on a rollback like 10 laps into the race, which will be pretty terrible. But we'll see what happens with that. Josh, let us know what's going on in the world of iRacing and gaming. what we should be looking forward to, and if you're going to be streaming by chance.
Yeah, I mean, last week we did the NASCAR Draft Master Series at Daytona, and still at Daytona, but this week, but they change cars every week, and last week was the 2011 Car of Tomorrow, 2011-2012 era, where, without the splitter braces on there. So yeah, that was pretty fun, and it's unrestricted, so no restrictor plates there, going 240 miles an hour in the draft at Daytona. Definitely have to get out of the gas and even do a little bit of tap of the brake there to get the car set for corner entry. So that was pretty interesting. Didn't ever think that I'd see the day where I'd have to use the brakes at Daytona mid corner, but I did a few times to try to save the tires, because definitely with this car, for whatever reason on the setup, you burn up the right front and the right rear pretty quickly. If you go flat out, you'd be finished by halfway. So yeah, I ended up actually winning one of those. The last one that I entered, coming to the last lap, the leader got caught up in an incident on the last lap, and I was able to make up a lot of time and pass by him. A lot of the guys were saying in the server that was karma for how he conducted himself at the start of the race, and definitely blocked a couple of guys that the wrong way at the start for some reason, and some guys didn't really like how he started up the race, and then I guess at the end a lap car hit the wall and then spun out into his path and took him out there. So yeah, I was in second at that time and managed to hold on for the win there. So yeah, actually finally won on oval for the first time in 2023. Had a lot of close calls this year, but finally won an oval race here this year on iRacing there. So that happened, and then did a lot of racing with the BMW GT4 over on the Indianapolis road course, and then raced mostly in the 30-minute open setup session and ran pretty well, but then ran in the fixed setup version, which was only a 15-minute session, and took kind of what I learned driving wise and put it together in that one, and then ended up winning the 15-minute session there on the road course. So yeah, that was pretty fun. Glad I was able to actually win two races on the same night, road course and super speedway. So actually doing something for once in iRacing. Yeah, so I think I did stream one of the races I did, but I didn't win. But it's up there. Definitely was a lot of flat out racing on Daytona there. So continues this week. I think it's the next gen, or it's either the 87 car or the next gen car. So that might be interesting with especially the 87, another unrestricted car with a lot of tire wear going on the repaved Daytona Superspeedway. So that should be interesting in terms of pace. How does the tire fall off over the course of a run? So we'll see how that goes. You got that. And then, I think I have to look at the schedule here, but you got road course side. Let me pull that up. Course iRacing side, Talladega for the Cup Series and the Truck Series going on. Talladega there, oval only, fixed. So let's see. 87s, interestingly enough, the 87s, they probably run Talladega too much at the 87 cars anyways, but they're at Martinsville, so that's kind of an interesting choice there by the schedule makers. Guess they don't have to always follow the real life series, but there's that. ARCA cars are at Homestead, Miami. Trucks is mentioned at Talladega Superspeedway. NASCAR Cup at Talladega. You got open wheel C, so the Indy cars at Homestead. Like we talked about the schedule, they should race there for the real life IndyCar series. And then you got the Iowa Speedway for the Gen 4 cars, which that's a fun track. Lots of tire wear with a high horsepower car. So that should definitely be fun. And then the Xfinity Series at Talladega as well on the oval side. And then on the road side, pull that up. We got apply there, and we got the Toyota GR Cup at Red Bull Ring. Got the Formula Ford Fixed Rookie Series at Virginia International Raceway. Super Formula at Okayama Circuit. That's a fun track and a fun car there. Stock Car Brazil at Charlotte Motor Speedway. You've got the Mustang Skip Barber Challenge at Circuit of the Americas. The IMSA iRacing Series. So that's all the IMSA cars at Spa. So that should be fun, especially with the GTP cars. Got that. Let's see what else. The Formula IR on the Texas Oval this week. Formula GT3 Circuit Day leading on there. The MX5s at Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval. So yeah, as always, lots of choices to be able to pick and choose with iRacing, of course, and of course there's always the private leagues and stuff, which people run their own stuff there and run their own series, hosted within iRacing. So that's always option there too. So yeah, we'll see if we can try to win again this week. Try to do a couple of Talladega races. We'll see how it works there compared to how it's been on the past with the super speedway stuff. Kind of got lucky this week or this past week with running Daytona. Gets all spread out, so there's less chance of getting caught up in the big one as long as you qualified up front, which I was able to do. So yeah, we'll see how it goes this week. And definitely always looking forward to another opportunity for a win on iRacing. So of course can follow the streams on there. Streamed a couple of times this past week on Twitch TV/usailor2. Go on there. Probably try to do some Talladega, as I said, on there, and maybe some other stuff. We'll see. And then you got the Twitter, which I'll post those on, hopefully on Twitter at JP Huffine on there on Twitter. And then, of course, also follow our YouTube page, which we'll try to post the videos out ASAP and everything. Go follow that at Gripstrip Podcasts on YouTube. Subscribe and interact or engage with our videos. So definitely, as always, glad to be able to be on, of course. And we've seen a new moment here with the algorithm doubling down on one of our picks and everything. So we'll see how that goes with a very very likely pick in Brad Keselowski there. So should be a fun weekend of racing here at Talladega.
And one thing's for sure, it's the algorithm definitely adds to the enjoyment for me, because I do not like super speedway racing. But when you pick somebody, especially someone that we don't really usually think about, it's cool. But in this case, picking a guy who has been one of the more successful drivers on super speedways in his career would be a great opportunity and time for him to go and get that victory. You can find us find our show at Gripstrip Pod on X. We can find me at PG Matthew 28 on X. You can find the Gripstrip Podcast basically anywhere where you listen to podcasts, but philipgmatthew.com is one place you can go and get that. Get the show. We're on Podbean. We can, Josh mentioned, of course, the video feeds on YouTube, the Gripstrip Podcast YouTube page. Trying to think what else. Yeah, so we'll, I think that's about it. I mean, you're go and follow us on Twitter or X, and follow us on Philip G. Matthew 28 on Insta. Yeah, that's, we'll see we'll move on, and next week, episode 189 of the Gripstrip Podcast, recap Cup and Trucks at Talladega, NFL Week 4 roundup. We'll go over MotoGP, Moto2, World Superbikes, and then NHRA, which will be racing this weekend at Gateway, and the Bathurst 1000, so one of the biggest races in the whole world. Shane Van Gisbergen's last chance, at least for a while, to win the great race. See if he can do that, and how that point situation will be between the Triple Eight team and the Erebus Coca-Cola team. And if Ford actually has a chance, which would be nice, since the Fords have been SOL for most of the season. We'll talk about all that. We'll preview Qatar. for Formula One, Cup and Xfinity at the Roval, make our picks, and who advances to the next round. But before that, we'll say goodbye, and thanks for listening to Grip Strip Podcast. We'll be back next week, and thanks for your support. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you around the corner.